Hi, everybody. My name is Caleb Ward, and I am the programming manager for Late Night for SeriesFest. And you just watched Blue Boar, and I'm very proud to welcome our creator, Alice Winslow. Say hello.
Hi. Hello.
We're so glad to have you, Alice, and thank you so much for sending the pilot our way. The team and I we were absolutely bowled over by it. I mean, it's insanely relevant, and it's funny, and very charming at times. And my first question, just sort of out of the gate, is really sort of like what the inception of this material was like.
Yeah.
This format and yeah.
So I was studying acting in London, and I found out we were doing research for a different project, and I found out that I was actually the ancestor of a woman who was tried as a witch in Salem in 1692.
Oh.
And yeah.
Oh.
And her name is Mary Bradbury, and she was accused of turning into a blue boar and charging at her neighbors on horseback to try and trip them, in addition to lots of other things like putting maggots in butter and causing shipwrecks. And I just became kind of obsessed with this woman and the fact that her blood is in my blood. And it was also around the time, for whatever reason, I had become really interested in sort of the phenomenon of YouTube tutorials and just like, what is behind that impulse to like teach people how to tie a tie, or, like to record yourself. And, I don't have any problem with social media. I engage with it. I like it, but I do think there's something beneath. There's like an anxiety underneath that sort of compulsion to get validation externally. And it sort of felt related to me, this as humans, we're always trying to assign blame for the things in our lives that either we can't control or we can't explain, or that are painful. Most primarily like things about ourselves we don't like, I think. So the framework for that in 1692 was like, well, my cow died, so probably my neighbor is a witch and my neighbor killed it. And the framework now is like, well, I'm in a bad mood, so maybe I should take out gluten. And also like, just like these bizarre, very human ways we try and explain our world to sort of avoid looking at the deep existential panic that we all face every day. Anyway, so that's kind of a long way of where it came from.
No, that's really interesting, sort of recontextualizing it as sort of a modern day witch hunt that we also kind of put on ourselves.
Yeah.
Really, wow, that's really interesting. I have not looked at it that way, but my God, now I want to set my phone on fire. But that's actually, I want to go back even further to that. You found out, you were able to track that you are related through your ancestry to this person. That's absolutely mind-blowing.
I know.
Yeah. And it kind of, I mean, I'm assuming you were able to shoot the series sort of like in Salem, or were you in Massachusetts, somewhere in New England?
So I grew up in the Hudson Valley, and this house, I went on a field trip there in 4th grade, and I was obsessed with historical houses as a kid. And I got sick on the way there, and so I wasn't allowed to go inside. So it's always been this house that I had never been allowed inside. And when we were looking at places and everything was, we were looking in New England, we were looking around Salem, and everything was pretty expensive, and we had a very low budget. And I thought of this house, and we wrote to them, and they asked for like a very small donation to the Historic Society. They let us shoot there for, I think, 3 or 4 days without really, there was someone in the house, but she was in a whole nother side, like very
do your own thing, just throwing it down.
We'll use the props as long as we put them back. I mean, it was an absolute dream.
Wow.
So.
Oh, that's amazing. So I'm assuming there's more. There's more than just this one.
There is. We have a whole season designed. I'm very, very excited about it. We get to meet Mary Bradbury, who has a competing show called Just Boil It, which is a cooking show. We get to meet Samuel Paris, who was Salem's minister and also father of one of the girls who was twitching in the real history.
Right.
And yeah, so I've got a great team assembled. We're looking for funding, but I'm really excited to put it in a larger context.
Absolutely. Well, I have a question sort of directed, directly to the material itself, which is, do you have a favorite way of sexing up your bonnet?
I really like the stuffing yarn in it.
Yeah.
Because I think that's the one that feels the craziest.
Exactly. Yeah.
This action.
Yeah.
But there are so many ways.
Yeah. How many ways do you know of sexing up your bonnet?
Well, it's funny now because I feel like this is what's going to happen with face masks. Like face masks are going to get really interesting soon enough.
Yeah, I'm terrified of that.
Yeah. I'm also scared of like the tan lines I'm going to get like burn and just have a pale little square here.
Yeah, I feel like you got to find a way of sort of like evening out, a shift on, a shift off, just to get out the line, or at least, less of an aggressive tan line. Yeah, exactly. My favorite is dipping the bonnet in dirty well water.
Oh yeah, that's your favorite.
Yeah, it's like, you have to distress your jeans. What's the difference,
Exactly, yeah. Have you tried this with your bonnet? I'm guessing you have a bonnet.
I did the other day, and it really, it went over like gangbusters. I wore it on my run, and that got it a little dirtier, so, it was perfect. Honestly, dirty it up, then go on a run. That's how you really get the perfect.
That's a good one.
Yeah, it's true. I was wondering if you were, obviously beyond sort of doing some research internally, as far as ancestry goes, if you did any sort of research into source material, whether it was researching about the Salem witch trials, there's quite a bit of verbiage that you use throughout that feels incredibly, period accurate. So, I've seen The Crucible, I get this.
Yeah. I took a lot of that from the actual transcript of the trial from my ancestor. It was the trials of a lot of the people. It was incredibly repetitive. It was always like grievously afflicted by blah blah blah. Or like they had a language that they just kind of repeated.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, I did I'm a big fan of Stacy Schiff's book, The Witches, which if you're ever looking for a good read on this, it's so good.
About that book.
Yeah. And she talks about a question that's really interesting to me, which isn't necessarily addressed. Well, I think it is in a way in this series, but, why have we taken a story about women in peril and turned it into a story about perilous women? The Crucible, I have a lot of affection for that play, but it is essentially about a manipulative teenage girl who like manipulates a like really good guy. And, the story of the history is about 14 women hanging and a lot of other women like twitching uncontrollably. Like that's a problem, so I'm interested in that side of the story and all the stuff that was going on there. So
well, I think that's kind of what happens when a man named Arthur Miller tries to write a story about women, Well, awesome. Is there a way we can sort of follow the progress with Blue Boar or yourself, or how does the audience, how do we get involved?
Yeah, it doesn't have its own private account, but you can follow me on Instagram. I actually don't even know my handle. Let me check. I think I'm like.
This is the time to know.
Oh, yeah, I know. I am AV Winslow.
There you go.
That's me.
Awesome. Well, cool. Did you have anything else you wanted to say before we go?
No, I just want to say thank you. I'm such a fan of SeriesFest, and I'm so beyond thrilled to be involved. So
awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we're glad to have you, and wishing the best of luck. And this was great. This was wonderful.
Thank you.
All right, we'll say goodbye. Well, everybody.
Okay. Bye.